After 23 years of apartment living, saving every penny I could, I finally found it my dream home. A beautiful cedar-shingled house nestled between towering pine trees, complete with a wraparound porch where I could sip my morning coffee and watch the sunrise. But what made this house truly special wasn't just its charm. It sat exactly 1 foot outside the boundary of the strictest homeowners association in town. While my neighbors dealt with rules about grass height, approved paint colors, and when they could put out their trash cans, I was free to make my little slice of heaven exactly what I wanted. The realtor smiled as he handed me the keys. You know, most folks don't realize the HOA boundary stops right at that fence line. You get to live next to all the benefits of their maintained neighborhood, but none of the restrictions. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Little did I know, one neighbor would spend the next 6 months trying to prove me wrong. Moving day arrived. My sister Linda helped me carry boxes while my golden retriever Max explored every corner of his new kingdom. That's when I heard a sharp voice cutting through the peaceful afternoon. "Excuse me? You there with the moving truck?" I turned to see a woman striding toward me with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. She appeared to be in her 50s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a clipboard clutched like a weapon. Everything about her posture screamed authority. "That truck cannot be parked there," she announced. Pointing at our moving van sitting perfectly legally on the public street, I wiped sweat from my forehead, tried to stay friendly. "Oh, I'm sorry, but I checked with the city. The street parking is completely legal here." Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "Not in this neighborhood it isn't. Our homeowners association has very strict rules about—" "I appreciate your concern," I interrupted gently, "but there might be some confusion. My house isn't part of your HOA." The woman's jaw literally dropped open. She stared at me, then at my house, and back at her clipboard like it had personally betrayed her. "That's absolutely impossible," she sputtered. "Every single house in this neighborhood is part of our association." I'm the vice president, I would know. I couldn't help but smile. "I'm afraid not this one." The realtor was very clear about the property lines. "This house is outside your jurisdiction." For a moment, she stood there speechless, her face growing redder by the second. Finally, she straightened her shoulders and declared, "We'll just see about that." Before marching away, Linda raised her eyebrows. "Well, that was ... intense. Think she'll be trouble?" I laughed and shook my head. "Nah, once she checks the property records, she'll realize her mistake." How much trouble could one neighbor really be? Famous last words. Over the next week, I fell in love with my new freedom. I planted a small vegetable garden with tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. I hung a hammock between 2 oak trees and strung warm white lights across the porch, something I'd dreamed of doing for years. But the more I enjoyed my home, the more my self-appointed neighbor watched me. I'd catch her standing at her window or positioned on her front steps, arms crossed, studying my every move like she was gathering intelligence. The first note appeared on my mailbox 3 days later. HOA Policy Section 3.2. I crumpled it up and threw it away. Chuckling to myself, the second note arrived after I mowed my lawn in a diagonal pattern instead of straight lines. "Please rectify immediately." By the 4th note, I wasn't laughing anymore. That's when she decided to approach me directly again. I was watering my garden when I heard that familiar, sharp voice. "Those lights are completely inappropriate. They're tacky and against our community regulations." I took a deep breath and turned around. "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but as I mentioned before, I'm not part of your HOA." Her lips pressed into such a thin line I thought they might disappear entirely. "Do you honestly think you can just live here and flaunt every rule? Do you have any idea what this does to our property values?" "I understand you care about your neighborhood," I said, trying to stay calm. "But my property is my responsibility, not yours." Her face flushed bright red. "We'll see about that," she snapped, apparently her favorite phrase, before storming off again. That night, Linda called to check on me. "How's paradise treating you?" "Well," I said, looking out at my peaceful porch lights, "I think I might have accidentally declared war on the HOA." 3 weeks later, I found an official-looking letter in my mailbox that made my blood pressure spike. It had the HOA logo at the top and was titled "Violation Notice" in bold red letters. The letter demanded I remove my porch lights, repaint my front door an approved neutral color, eliminate my vegetable garden, and pay a fine of $300. The kicker? They threatened daily fines until I complied. I was furious, but I decided to handle this the right way. I would go to their next board meeting and set the record straight once and for all. The community center meeting room buzzed with tension. About 30 residents sat in folding chairs, facing a table where 5 board members sat. Right in the center, looking smugger than ever, was my neighbor, whose name I learned was Mrs. Henderson. When they called for new business, I stood up and held up the violation letter. I received this in my mailbox, and I need to address it publicly. My property is not under this Oz authority. You have no legal right to fine me or dictate what I do with my home. The room erupted in whispers. Mrs. Henderson shot up from her chair like a rocket. He's lying, she practically shouted. That house is part of our community, and he's been deliberately ignoring our rules for weeks. He's making a mockery of everything we stand for. The board president, a tired-looking gentleman with glasses, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Actually, Mrs. Henderson, I did check the property records after our last ... conversation. His house is indeed outside our ... The room fell dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Mrs. Henderson's face turned a shade of purple I didn't know was humanly possible. That's ridiculous. He can't just live there like that. It's not fair. The board president sighed heavily. I'm afraid he can live however he chooses on his own property. Mrs. Henderson slammed both hands on the table, making everyone jump. This isn't over. She screamed. This will never be over. I walked out of that meeting with my head held high, but my stomach was in knots. Something told me Mrs. Henderson meant every word she said. What happened next changed everything. In our next episode, I'll tell you about the spray paint, the police reports. In the morning, I woke up to find her in my backyard. If you want to hear how this story ends, and trust me, you do, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because sometimes standing up for what's right means being willing to fight for it.